Nikkei Asia News Roundup
with Jada and Brian. Welcome to the Nikkei Asia News Roundup with your hosts Jada and Brian,
bringing you the latest updates and insights on the dynamic world of Asia and more.
Now let's delve into the headlines. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.
Apple's new iPhone 16 series debuted in Indonesia last week and was met with lines of eager buyers in Jakarta after the government lifted a ban on sales of the smartphone following the company's pledge to invest more than $150 million in the country.
Chinese shares are facing renewed risk of being delisted in the U.S. after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said such a move was possible, refueling a long-running dispute.
The European Union is considering a virtual ban on carbon fiber in motor vehicles that could take a toll on the materials Japanese manufacturers, which have more than half of the global market share.
Turkey and Indonesia are deepening their defense ties, with a recent bilateral meeting highlighting the progress in their collaboration in various areas, including Jakarta's potential participation in a new fighter jet development.
Nintendo has decided to postpone the release of its Switch 2 gaming device in China in an apparent response to the country's tight controls targeting the gaming industry. The Kyoto-based video game company is planning to launch the Switch 2 in Japan, Europe, and other regions on June 5th.
Extreme weather and U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs threaten to accelerate a rise in international trading prices of coffee beans, with a United Nations body estimating that consumers could feel the pinch from the second half of this year to 2026. Now moving on to the next segment.
Southeast Asian rice farmers struggle against Indian exports. Prices in Southeast Asian rice markets are plunging because of oversupply after India resumed exports of the staple grain. White rice export prices in Thailand were $412 a ton this month, according to the Thai Rice Exporters Association, down 31% from a year ago. This is the largest price drop in 11 years for the month of April. In September, New Delhi lifted export restrictions on white rice other than basmati that had been in place since July 2023. India last month also started allowing exports of cheaper broken rice used in processed food. Most analysts say the international price of white rice will continue to drop. Thailand is the world's second largest rice exporter by volume, according to data from the 2022-2023 season. Agriculture accounts for less than 10% of gross domestic product, but a lack of willingness by Thai rice farmers to grow the crop will affect food security at home and abroad. Vietnamese media reports prices there are at the lowest point in 9 years. Some expect this year's export volume to be 20% lower than last year. India is the world's leading rice exporter, accounting for 40% of the global share, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Exports from India surpass those of Thailand and Vietnam combined.
Trump policies threaten to shake foundation of shock-resistant Philippine peso. The Philippine peso is bracing for a potential jolt as U.S. President Donald Trump's promised crackdown on immigration threatens to disrupt global labor markets and squeeze the billions sent home by overseas Filipino workers, a key economic lifeline. Over the past couple of weeks, global financial markets have been roiled by the other side of Trump's policies, tariffs. But in the currency market, the peso has remained stable compared with regional peers, such as the Indonesian rupiah, Thai baht, and Singapore dollar, all of which have sharply weakened. This is not the only time the Philippine currency has shown resistance against global shocks. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, the peso remained resilient. A major reason for this relative strength has been the ample flow of remittances into the country. The Philippines is one of the world's largest labor exporters, a result of a policy enacted back in 1974. This measure has driven millions of Filipinos to work abroad to lift their families out of poverty, as well as turn consumption around the country to this very day. However, stricter U.S. immigration policies could reduce labor mobility for Filipinos, affecting remittance growth, according to experts.
And now for news highlights. In each episode, Jada and I have a discussion about a recent article or articles that have particularly captured our attention.
And today we'd like to talk about Singapore's upcoming general election.
There is several elections coming along in Asia in the next few weeks or months, but we're going to concentrate on Singapore this time.
Yes, it's pretty. I mean, it's on May 3rd, so it's
pretty soon.
Less than a month away. The campaign will start this month, April 23rd, I believe, and it's a significant election because it's kind of a test for the current Singaporean leader,
who has been in office for just about a year now. It's like Lawrence Wong. That's the prime minister. He's the fourth prime minister of Singapore ever. He replaced Lee Hsien Loong, who was in power for 2 decades.
Yes, very long time. Yeah.
And so this is considered a test of whether he is deemed doing a good job.
Yeah. It was a pretty big generational shift, right? When Lee Hsien Loong quit and it became Wong. He's pretty young, and it'll be his first test. I think it'll be really interesting, especially with what's happening right now in the world with Trump tariffs, concerns about worsening, escalating trade wars, and Singapore is a very trade-reliant country.
Trade, banking, finance, Singapore is a major hub of that, and how they handle this situation, which is constantly changing, will come down to leadership.
Yeah, because Wong has said that Singapore will have to brace for more shocks. So he acknowledges, that I think it's a critical time.
Now, we might mention that he's a member of the People's Action Party, which has also, I mentioned, 4 prime ministers. They were all of the same party. The People's Action Party, or PAP, has been in power since 1965, which is the founding of Singapore as its own nation.
Since its independence. Yeah.
So they've always been in power. So it's not a question in this election of how, whether they will win. It's by how much.
Yes, experts are pretty confident, PAP will win, but in recent years they've had, I guess, a little slip up with their seats.
There's a nice little graphic to this story that shows, it's a line graph showing each election. So there's 2001, 2006, 2011, 2015, 2020. Those are the elections. They're about 4 or 5 years apart. And it goes down from 75% then to 60%. But then it goes back up to 69.9% in 2015, but then back down to 61%. That was a big deal when that happened because it looked like the PAP was recovering its usual dominance, and then it slipped. And once it gets down to lower percentages, they have to start considering coalitions or working with other opposition parties about policies. And that seems to be one of the things going on in this current upcoming election, is that there are various smaller parties in Parliament that have ideas that Lawrence Wong looks like he might be incorporating to help win over voters.
Yeah, I think because on Wong's mind is that how much he can recover public support, it will be crucial. And the PAP has been known as a pro-business sort of party, but now they're showing that they're more they will work towards more to be more responsive to public concerns, especially income inequality. I think
cost of living too.
Cost of living.
Because it's happening in other parts of the world, but it also in Singapore, where essentials like food and housing are becoming more expensive, and so people are getting a bit concerned about that. And there's a concern of whether the current ruling party is addressing it well enough.
Yeah. So I think there's been talks of a possible wealth tax by the opposition, also, support for public housing, possibly stricter regulation on foreign workers, immigration, which some Singaporeans think is increasing competition for jobs in the country. I think it's really interesting because in Singapore, once you're above 21, you have to vote.
Yeah, voting is compulsory.
Yeah, so it'll be a little less than 3 million eligible voters will cast their ballots.
So what's the population of Singapore? 5 or 6 million? So that's a significant number if you discount people that are too young to vote.
Yeah.
So it gets, which means there's going to be, this is the first election in 5 years, there's going to be a whole chunk of new voters.
Yeah.
Young voters.
Yes,
and there's a question of how they feel about all this, because they've grown up in a world where this one party has always been in charge.
True.
And looks like it'll continue being in charge. So are they willing to say, keep going, or are they going to maybe vote for an opposition party, knowing it's not going to win, but that it will have more influence on the ruling party? It's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, because in the article, there is a quote by someone that says, among millennials and Gen Z, there is a growing appetite for the opposition. So that we could see, a further change. And that brings us to the close of today's episode.
We look forward to having you join up again for the next edition of the Nikkei Asia News Roundup.
Stay informed, stay curious. Until next time, I'm Jada.
And I'm Brian. See you again, and take care. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.